Thanks everybody for joining us today. Lovely to see so many of you that I remember from the previous times that I've been here. It's always great to be back around this crowd. So thanks again for joining us for this session on unlocking the ROI insights from Forrester's TEI study of Adobe Learning Manager. And like Betsy said in the chat, don't want to bury the lead. TEI stands for Total Economic Impact. And we'll be unpacking that throughout this session. So as Gary said, my name is Justin. For those of you who don't know me, e-learning evangelist here at Adobe. My role today is pretty simple. I'm going to try to connect the dots between what the research shows in this study and the value of learning and what our customers are experiencing every day in practice that we see at Adobe. I'm really thrilled to be joined by two experts from Forrester Consulting today who led this study. First, Tamara Lee, a research consultant who focuses on technology adoption and the total economic impact methodology. She works with organizations to uncover the business value of their investments and translate data into actionable insights. So, Tamara, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin.
Yes, very good. Alongside Tamara, we have Betsy Summers, principal analyst at Forrester. Betsy's an expert in the future of work and employee experience, advising leaders on workforce strategies, HR technology, and how organizations can adapt to years of experience guiding executives on how learning and development can directly impact business performance. So, Betsy, thank you so much for joining us as well. Lovely to see you.
Such a pleasure. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Very good. Together, Tamara and Betsy are going to share their analysis of the economic and organizational impact that Adobe Learning Manager is having. I'm going to change slides here for just a second. Here's kind of a quick look at what we're going to cover. Betsy's going to start us off with some current state of learning stats and insights and why this conversation is so timely and important. And then Tamara and Betsy are going to kind of tag team and walk us through the total economic impact study, including the methodology, the composite organization, and the quantified benefits that they've uncovered. After that, we're going to look at the unquantified benefits and analyst recommendations, and we'll leave some time at the end for your questions as well. So if you have questions, we will have a dedicated period at the end for Q&A that we will be happy to answer any questions that you have. Along the way, I'm going to jump in a couple of times to kind of highlight where we see these findings coming to life in the Adobe Learning Manager community. And we'll also include a few quick polls so that we can hear from you as well. And that's actually what we're going to start with today. We're going to start off with a very quick poll. So just in the chat, what I'd love for you to do is I want to get the pulse of this group. So in the chat, let us know, what's your top learning priority right now? It could be closing skill gaps, boosting employee engagement, enabling partners and customers, or tackling compliance and risk. Just drop a word or two that represents what's most important to you and your team today. So let's see here. Okay. A lot of A's. Closing skills. Okay. There's a couple of B's. All right. A. Yeah. Okay. This kind of tracks with what I see and what I hear. We're in the age of a big skill shift. So it makes perfect sense that that's what people are really focusing on. I see some people really focusing on B and C as well. Employee engagement, obviously very important. And I think one of the ways you get employees engaged is to help them close those skills gaps. So it's always interesting because this gives us a snapshot of what learning leaders are focused on right now, and it connects directly to the trends that the Forrester folks have been studying. So with that, I want to bring in Betsy, principal analyst at Forrester again. I want her to jump in here and talk a little bit about the future of work, employee experience, and how she's been looking closely at all of these types of priorities. Betsy, how do what you're seeing in the market line up with like what this group is sharing here in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it's definitely spot on to what I'm seeing. My role at Forrester and like my primary job is to share what I see honestly and objectively, looking at the market, specifically with the future of work team. We look at how the workplace, how the worker experience, how the relationship between employer and employee are shifting and changing over time. What are the technologies that are coming into the workplace that are changing our relationship with the work that we do? And I can definitely say, I mean, especially from just even the last few years, but you can think out even decades, learning matters now more than ever, especially given what we're seeing on this left-hand side, the technological innovation. the changes are coming so quickly. What we're seeing now, because we're on this exponential rate of change and rate of innovation that we see with AI in particular, at the moment that we're in right now, the rate of change is outpacing human readiness. The need for upskilling and reskilling, for learning in general, and dealing with the discomfort of not knowing exactly what the future holds, it increases the need for especially enterprise learning to help people do their job better, but also the very kind of personal expectation to always be learning, always be employable, always be ready for the next thing, trying to do what you can to see around corners, ingesting new information as you can, and remaining open-minded. But that is very, very, very hard because of this center block, the uncertainty about the future. Uncertainty makes human beings kind of batten down the hatches. It makes us want to become sometimes an ostrich, sticking our head into the sand, because when we feel uncertain about the future, we get kind of scared and we want to really bring our space into what we can control. But that is definitely a risk, especially with the moment that we're in now. We have to actually lean into the discomfort and recognize the importance of critical thinking, being adaptable, being flexible with the changes coming at us, which is another reason why learning is really, really critical in the moment. The third one is based on what you were saying, Justin, earlier, just about engagement in general. We see from our research at Forrester that the opportunities to learn and grow is a central component to employee engagement. People naturally, as human beings, we want to learn and grow. We don't always want to take the next step in our career. You know, we're not always like looking for the next job, but we're always trying to learn and master what we have at hand, what we're interested in, aligned to our aspirations. We need an environment where we can feel productive. We need an environment that helps us learn and grow things. Human beings, like as a species, we don't like to stay still. We love to learn and grow. And so that retention aspect, it's really, really important to provide learning, and also thinking about the silver tsunami as well. With a lot of people in the boomer generation retiring, we need to make sure that we are enabling that knowledge transfer and making sure that the upskilling and reskilling across the enterprise is not going away. So from a strategic standpoint, I see learning like a really, really critical strategy for enterprises to lean into. I wish they were investing even more in learning. Honestly, they should be, especially because of some of this data around how jobs are changing, right? Like AI is a kind of new type of tool in a way that it's not just a tool, but it can start to replace tasks for us. And so that will lead to a lot of job change. Based on Forrester research, we see that 79% of these AI decision makers say that AI is going to impact the way they plan for employment over the next 2 years. Like, of course, this is like a duh statement. Most people are going to be changing the way they think about who they need to hire based on what they can automate. Now, also based on the same survey, most of our respondents said that it's actually going to increase the number of employees over the next 12 months. And World Economic Forum says that it's going to lead to more jobs added than the jobs that it's going to take away. But I also want to say that we are getting so much data and so much conflicting data in as well about the kinds of jobs that will change and the kinds of jobs that will go away. It's a very fractured labor market. And so there are jobs that will be replaced more than other jobs. The fact is that all jobs are going to experience change, which is that is the kind of root cause of needing learning. Like any kind of change is going to need some kind of behavior change to adapt. And that's what everyone from leadership down to the individual contributors need to think through. Here's a point here, which kind of bear with me. This is a This is a big conceptual slide. This is what I talk to leaders about all the time at Forrester. No matter what function they're in, no matter what job they're in, they are delivering some type of value to end customers. To do that, they develop a certain number of products or services. And to do that, they have to deliver certain capabilities to the business. Like if you're in learning, the capabilities that you're delivering are like compliance learning, learning measurement, instructional design, like these really big bucket capabilities that you have to deliver to the business or your enterprise or your organization in order to eventually deliver value to your end customer or your end constituency. Business capabilities is an orchestration of assets. And this is where it gets a little complex, because in order to deliver any of your capabilities, it's going to come at the orchestration of a lot of stuff. You got technology, you got process, you got people, you have data, and all of those together, depending on how you orchestrate all of those assets, then you can deliver those capabilities. AI brings in a new kind of consideration for us when we think about how we want to deliver capabilities. Usually we think about, okay, what people do I need on my team and how am I going to source those? Am I going to build? Am I going to buy? Or am I going to borrow those? Now with AI, we're bringing in increasing amounts of automation, not from just a horizontal perspective, but vertically, like full tasks, especially when you look at agentic AI, we're also thinking about that bot. So we have not just the 3 Bs of workforce planning, but the 4 Bs: build, buy, borrow, and bot. And so for every person, as you think about delivering your learning capabilities, as you think about delivering your enablement capabilities, whatever your job is, how you actually deliver that value will change, because you have different levers now for figuring out how you want to deliver that, increasingly with that bot aspect. And so that, I think, is driving a bunch of change right now for every level of the organization. One of the other things I see, and my role here on the webinar too, is to kind of give you the backdrop and the context for what then will present to you as that total economic impact study that Forrester did with Adobe. One of the things that I see missing a lot when I look at organizations and I ask them, like, who are your end customers? Sometimes they will see only their end customers as like the employees that they have in the organization. But when we think very broadly about all the people that the brand touches and all the ways that the brand needs to interact with all of its end customers, we actually see a very broad spectrum. And so that speaks to the use cases that we need our learning platforms and our enablement platforms to reach as well. It's not just about employees, it's also the partner ecosystem that you have and your end customers too, and making sure there is very strategic alignment across all of those constituencies and all of those personas, because we don't want people kind of getting different and different off-brand information about how to interact with you. I'm going to share 3 data points here just to kind of fill in some of the color around these 3 personas, or these 3 kind of constituents. One is from the employee perspective. This question, and I apologize, it's a very squinty slide. But when we ask the question, which of the following are the key activities that your key actions that your organization is taking to improve the experience of your employees? And these are leaders and professionals that are working on improving the experience of employees as one of their priorities for the next 12 months. That top response, the most often chosen response, is increasing access to training and skill development, career mobility, mentoring, and development opportunities. We know that this is really, really important for organizations, both to drive retention, but to also future-proof organizations. Next data point is looking at, and this is an analysis that I just ran on some of the data that we were getting back from some of our partner ecosystem surveys. Companies that provide partner reps with different or more training than their direct sales rep, like within that channel, are almost 7 times more likely to be a high growth company. That's incredible. And I apologize for just reading out the words for the slide, but it's really, really powerful stuff when you consider how important partner reps are, your partner ecosystem, for aligning your brand message to their end customers. It's really, really powerful. So that's that kind of for the partner ecosystem, some data for you there. For the third, when we talk about delivering content and like kind of what are all of the activities that you deliver, like as a vendor, that you deliver to your end customers as part of your digital experience, you can see a ton of different kinds of content, from training, knowledge bases, blogs, articles, thought leadership content, recommendations, guidance, webinars, discussion forums. There's a plethora of ways that customers want to engage with their vendors and their partners, and making sure that you are facilitating that in an easy way for you, because there's a lot of things you can do, but you need a simple way to deliver them. The last thing I'm going to go through before I hand it off to my colleague, who's actually going to show you the net present value and ROI numbers that we got from Learning Impact, is related to, and I'm sure any of my friends here in learning measurement will appreciate this. It's related to how we communicate the value of learning within the organization. I'm going to use the Kirkpatrick model to demonstrate this, just because everyone knows what the Kirkpatrick model is in terms of just the learning impact, right? Oh, good. Justin says, now we're speaking my language. Okay. So one of the things I see a lot, even when I talk to learning professionals, is they're still using some of this level 1 and level 2 language. When I ask them, what does success look like for you? Sometimes they respond to me in the level of or like the number of registrations, the number of completions, the percentage of completions that they get on all the stuff. And right away, I know that we need to level up the way that we're communicating and talking about our impact, especially with AI. AI brings a huge opportunity for learning professionals, but it also comes as a threat if you're not thinking about the impact that you can make with AI. It can threaten to commoditize and then replace certain tasks that you're doing. And so we need to think more critically about, how do we measure behavior change, and how are we looking at the results that learning has an impact on? We know that business results have a lot to do with more than just learning, but it also has to do with the environment and the leadership, et cetera. But we want to be able to demonstrate the ROI and the value that the way we deliver our learning has on that end result. And that's what we want to do, especially with this particular study, the TEI study, to give you really hard numbers that you can then fold into your business case and start speaking almost the language of the business with that particular business acumen, and certainly not resting on the activity metrics or the vanity metrics of like the level 1, or in worst case scenario, even like level 0. So there's this, this is a more strategic reason why going through the TEI study, for you to pick up on the metrics and the kind of business acumen part of it, also the actual impacts that Adobe Learning Manager is having with their customers, that will help you build business cases for whatever you're trying to do within your own learning practice or your own function itself. So with that, and I will come back, I'll be talking some about the more tactical kind of challenges and capabilities and benefits of learning platforms. But with that high level out of the way, I want to hand it over. So Justin, you're going to set us up right for our next section. Is that right?
I think we're just going straight to
Oh,
Tamara.
great.
Tamara
Great.
for this. Yeah,
Turn to
I think.
Tamara.
Yeah.
So Tamara is my colleague at Forrester. So she works on the consulting side. She designed and orchestrated the interviews. She'll talk to you all about the study itself. And with the analyst role there is really on an advisory capacity so that we can maintain the kind of market objectivity that our clients love about us. So Tamira, I'm going to hand it over to you. Can you tell these great people about the TEI study and what we did?
Of course. Thank you so much, Betsy. And that was such a great overview of why learning is so critical for organizations today. And what I like to do now is to build on that, by showing what happens when organizations invest and what are some of the tangible business outcomes they see. So earlier this year, Adobe has commissioned Forrester to conduct a total economic impact study to evaluate the impact of investing in Adobe Learning Manager. So I was the lead author of this study, and I'm very excited to walk you through what we have found. Right. So before diving into the results, I like to introduce the TEI methodology, which is, the backbone for the study. And the TEI is designed to essentially quantify the business value of an organization's investment. And in this case, we will be looking at the investment in Adobe Learning Manager. So this framework really looks at 4 key elements, and that is your benefits, cost, flexibility, and risk. So benefits captures, the financial impact of positive business outcomes. Cost reflects the necessary expenses to deliver a proposed value. And flexibility really talks about the potential future value of a solution. And last of all, risk, accounts for the uncertainty of the benefit, cost, and flexibility that is being identified. So all of these actually ensures that the analysis reflects a more conservative and accurate result. And for this study, we took a multi-step project approach. So we began with due diligence to understand Adobe Learning Manager. And, this involved meeting with Adobe stakeholders, reviewing product documentations, consulting with our analysts, and drawing on our Forrester research to understand the learning space. So from that, we built what we call a composite organization. So you can think of a composite as, a representative of the interviewees' organizations that reflect not only the target audience of Adobe Learning Manager, but also the key metrics that we have heard across our interviews. And using that composite, we built a financial model to quantify the business impact. And all of these information gets rolled into a written TEI study. Right, so just a little disclosure, what we're about to present is a summarized version of a full TEI study, and we encourage you to look at the full study for all the details. Right, so let's start, with the high-level results and the exciting numbers. And based on our composite organizations, we found that Adobe Learning Manager delivered a 337% ROI over 3 years, and showing a present value of 4 million in benefits and a net present value of 3.1 million after cost. And beyond the numbers, what really came through as a very big theme is the improvement of learner experience. So the manager of education and hospitality actually told us that their previous LMS fell short from the start. They experienced issues around navigation and usability, and ultimately the need to improve end user experience was the main reason why they switched to Adobe Learning Manager. So Justin, I know that we have looked really closely at these overview results, and we'd love to hear your perspective on them.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Tamara. I appreciate it. This customer quote that's on this slide is actually really interesting to me, and it really captures the heart of why an ROI of like 337% is even possible. Numbers alone don't move people. What moves people is generally the experience that they go through within that. And so, here at Adobe, when the platform is in place, when that platform is in place, it was clunky, navigation was confusing, learners disengaged, whatever the case may be. The frustration wasn't abstract, right? It showed up in terms of complaints, in wasted effort, and in results that didn't really materialize for that company. So improving the learner experience became their top priority, and that decision to move to Adobe Learning Manager is what really unlocked the return that Forrester was able to measure. So what I love about that slide is that it shows how that value comes to life for everybody that was involved. Let's take it from an administrator's point of view. It's about time and scale. Enrollment, automation, and dynamic content refreshes can cut repetitive tasks, oftentimes as much as like half. For instructors, it's more about simplicity. Instead of juggling, multiple tools for scheduling, rosters, and reporting, they can run everything in one place, and that really allows them to focus on things like teaching and actually connecting with the learners rather than worrying about the logistics. And when instructors are properly supported, the quality of delivery always improves, and that's a ripple effect that flows right into learner outcomes. And for the learners, whether they're employees, partners, customers, doesn't really matter, it comes down to the overall learning experience. The switch to Adobe Learning Manager replaced frustration with something that felt intuitive and modern, and learners can really open any content type in one seamless player. I'll talk a little bit about that later when we talk about the kind of intangible benefits of Adobe Learning Manager. But as anybody who's heard me talk about Adobe Learning Manager before, they know that the player is one of my favorite features. So full disclosure. And the system, recommends what matters most to them by personalizing the content that they see within their feeds. Suddenly that training feels less like a box that they're asked to check by HR and more like a resource that they can go to every single day. And adoption goes up as a result of that. Employee engagement, which we talked about earlier, that goes up when you make the learning feel more relevant. And the ROI numbers that you saw a moment ago, they really start to make sense. So when we talk about, the quote unquote millions of dollars in benefits, we're really talking about the daily reality for administrators, instructors, and learners all together. Each group gets a better experience, and together those improvements add up to the business results that Forrester was able to quantify on that slide. So with that context in mind, I'll turn it back over to you to explain how these efficiencies appear in the study and how they contribute to a broader financial impact. Thank you.
Yep, thanks so much, Justin. And experience is such a powerful part of this story. And to help, ground the numbers, let me walk us through who we interviewed and how we built the composite. So essentially, we spoke with 5 organizations using Adobe Learning Managers, and this is across industries like your financial services, insurance, manufacturing, hospitality, healthcare, and technology services. These organizations also operate, across regions, so including the US, India, South Africa, and your global markets. So they're using the platform for 3 main use cases, which we will touch upon later, and that will be internal employee upskilling, customer education, and partner education. So from those insights, we created a composite organization. And this composite is a global industry agnostic company that is headquartered in the US with $5 billion in annual revenue. And this composite also uses Adobe Learning Manager to support employee training, customer education, and partner enablement. So going a little bit into details, this organization also serves 20,000 employees, 20,000 customer learners, and 10,000 partner learners. So now that we have looked at the study design, I'll hand it over to Betsy to walk us through the broader learning landscape and the challenges organizations are facing today.
Great. So I'm going to break in here a little bit just to give another kind of contextual picture about this. Obviously, the learning platform market has evolved over time, no longer just looking at the kind of learning management capabilities of, assigning and delivering training, usually compliance training. We're seeing it expand into multiple capability areas. And, one platform could have multiple capabilities. So these aren't necessarily boundaries of like a vendor has to only choose one. There are several vendors, of course, that have all of these capabilities. But we've seen, certainly maybe 15 years ago, the growth of the learning experience platforms and digital adoption platforms as well. And now with the skills-based methodologies becoming a lot more popular, especially because of a lot of the technological innovation available with AI, we're seeing a lot more skills development platforms come into play as well. So a lot of these capabilities we're seeing expand vertically within the learning market. I'd say even with, content creation also being a part of this too, and supporting everyone from the instructional designer to the facilitator, to managers, to learning administrators, employees, etc., making sure that there's like very, very deep support and deep capability around the learning market space. And I'm excited to see the growth in this market beyond the learning management only, like the LMS only systems, because we need a lot of help. So on the left-hand side, we're seeing certainly a lot of needs and challenges that organizations are experiencing, right? The manual efforts to create, deliver, and track learning, right? Like pulling those reports or manually assigning training or manually doing version control for some of that compliance training. Lots of time, money, effort to both develop content and also deliver it, make content discoverable by employees, serve multiple personas and constituencies, having massive libraries that are not curated, just a ton to sift through. There's lots of challenges in the enterprise digital learning spaces, and even ILT, like, instructor-led training as well, that organizations need help on if they want to deliver faster and with more agility to meet the moment of the high skills needs and the high skills gaps. So we're seeing on the right-hand side these capabilities come out certainly in product roadmaps, but also in the integration strategies as well. Vertical support for the entire learning team, from content creation, curation, learning programs, assessments, analytics, creating blended learning and different analytics dashboards, business impact dashboards. Audiences, of course, beyond just employees, but making sure you can serve multiple audiences to give people an aligned brand experience and to help develop skill lockstep with each other. Integrations, skills intelligence, and embedded learning in the flow of work. These are all some of the capabilities that we're seeing in the broader learning market, because we know that organizations and all of the people they're trying to serve need different things from those organizations at different times. And it's incredibly challenging to try to meet the moment just as kind of a person with the manual tools that we have. So we need these digital tools to help scale the practices that we want to see come to life in our organization and also in our brand ecosystem. So I'll bring this back. So Tamara, for you to share some of the specific quotes and so the specific challenges that you are hearing from some of the clients in the interview context. I'd love to see kind of how that shapes up or matches what we're seeing in the broader market.
Yep, thanks so much, Betsy. And those challenges that you have seen in the market really resonated with what we have heard in our findings. And a very big theme that we have identified for prior, challenges and the prior state before Adobe Learning Manager was the poor user experience across learners, instructors, and administrators. So legacy LMS platforms were hard to navigate, and they didn't support modern learning formats like your mobile learning or micro learning. And if you look at the quote on the right, one learning consultant in financial services actually told us that their previous system only offered a very basic LMS, and they wouldn't know if people were truly engaged in training contents. And because of these, limitations, administrators often faced very manual workflows when creating courses, which involve, multiple steps. And not only that, interviewees also shared that their organizations relied on multiple LMS providers, across, departments, and this led to very fragmented learning experience and administrative overheads. Right. And these challenges actually pushed organizations to Adobe Learning Manager. So they were searching for a platform that offered a seamless user experience, one that has strong reporting insights, as mentioned, blended learning support, and the integration with broader systems. And for some, the ability to monetize content was also really important. So on the last point, the director of product training and manufacturing actually summed it up really well. So in their previous solution, there was almost no ability to customize their customers' learning experience. But with Adobe Learning Manager, there was improvements in user interface, navigation, and easier content discovery. And this contributed to their business growth. And to broaden that perspective, let me hand it back to Betsy, who will share her perspective on the benefits and the capabilities shaping the learning market.
Great. So back on the capabilities, right? This is part of that flow from the needs and challenges to the capabilities that vendors provide to meet those needs and challenges, and then the benefits that those capabilities deliver. The level of vertical support for people within the learning team, and also that kind of broader ecosystem, the analytics and reporting and tracking, the integrations, the intelligence embedded in platforms, micro-learning, like being able to deliver the right content at the right time, even at the right proficiency level. Those all deliver lots of benefits, of course, for learners and also learning admins and people who are trying to, in lots of circumstances, do more with less. So certainly the personalized learning opportunities, development at scale, workforce retention and engagement, and then you see a lot of efficiency value or a lot of efficiency benefits around time and effort savings for administrators, for facilitators, for managers, consistent brand experiences. And certainly we would want to see these learning investments linked to business results. I will say this as a caveat, and having worked at a learning vendor myself in the past, it is challenging sometimes to link learning initiatives and learning programs to actual business impact and business result. But just because it's challenging does not get you off the hook for trying to do it. Learning has to be a component in your business cases for demonstrating the impact that you want to make, especially because any kind of transformation or organizational change means behavior change, which means you got to unlearn something and learn something new. All of that has to do with learning. And so one of the things that we see even in these kinds of studies with interviewees, some organizations have done a lot of due diligence with quantifying some of these benefits, and others have not. And it's okay for some of these benefits to be unquantified, but if I could kind of leave you with anything like as a takeaway, it's that try to quantify as much as possible, even if it's directional in nature, even if it's ballpark in nature. You want to have these variables for learning included in the business cases, even if it's a little fuzzy or blurry. You still want it to show up, because the more practice you have with quantifying the business impact that you're making with the learning programs, the better you will get at it over time, which is in of itself a learning experience. As we practice something, we get better at it. So I would that's my that's my little soapbox. I'll get off my soapbox now. I'll turn it over to Tamara again to just talk about some of the quantified benefits that the interviewees experienced with Adobe.
Thanks so much, Betsy. And yes, we will get into the meat of the study, which is, the quantified benefits. So we have identified 6 key quantifiable benefits impacting internal employees, partners, and customers. And one of the biggest themes that was identified was productivity. So in fact, you can see that 3 of the 6 benefits here actually directly tied to time savings. And the largest one that had a present value of 1.9 million, it actually came from streamlining, cost publishing, maintenance, and support. The second biggest quantified benefit was time savings by instructors who spend far less effort in their routine admin tasks. And a smaller bucket of time savings was automating the onboarding and offboarding admin for new hires. And of course, beyond productivity, we have also heard cost savings from retiring your legacy LMS platforms. And that's actually the third biggest, quantified benefit. And finally, we also found 2 externally driven profit benefits as well. And these, came from your stronger partner performance and monetizing external online courses. Right, and starting off with the biggest benefit, we saw the reduction in time and effort to manage, learning content for administrators. And this includes productivity gains across publishing, maintenance, and support. And diving a little deeper into the how, first of which was through simplified course creation. So content assets could be uploaded once and reused across multiple courses and learning paths, and this saves a lot of manual effort. And secondly would be the reduction in content maintenance effort. So Adobe has a automatic propagation feature, which ensured that content updates were applied across all learning paths. So overall, this has saved 60% of time for publishing and maintaining new content in year 1. And thirdly, we've also seen reduction in help desk learning tickets, where there is improvements in the navigation and course assignments, which led to a 60% decrease in learning support tickets in year 1. So a training manager in hospitality put it really well. They could now very easily manage their micro-learning training. So instead of manually tracking everything, which used to be a real nightmare for them, now it just takes a few clicks to start building a course. Right, and apart from administrators, the second big benefit was targeting instructors. So they reduced their time spent on admin tasks, and we saw this in 2 main ways. First of which is through bulk result evaluations, where instructors could now mark, evaluation checklists in bulk instead of going through them one by one. And this was especially valuable in compliance-heavy industries where certifications require, a lot of validation. So the director of product training from manufacturing put it very simply, what used to take 100 clicks per learner now just takes, 3 or 4. And the second point would be the automated, digitized, and centralized attendance. So instructors no longer had to juggle paper sign-in, manual forms, or separate devices. And attendance is tracked digitally in one system with the completion certificates issued automatically. And altogether, this saved instructors about 60% of their time in year 1. And the third internal benefit was cost savings from retiring legacy systems. So upon adoption, Adobe Learning Manager became the primary LMS for the composite. And it fully retired its legacy LMS and eliminated associated legacy licensing costs. So what this means in numbers was a 3-year risk-adjusted benefit at a present value of 528,000. And of course, beyond internal benefits, we also saw externally driven ones. And this particular is the incremental partner-driven profits. So with Adobe Learning Managers, partners had easier access to training, better navigation, and improved user experience. And because of that, more trainings were completed by partners and they were performing better. And this drove, higher customer satisfaction for those partners and ultimately boosting the partner-driven profits for the composite. So the training manager from hospitality actually summed up this point very well. They told us that their partner hotels actually completed more trainings in sales, communication, and service, and they actually saw clear improvements in guest satisfaction, NPS score, and also received fewer negative feedback. So this is an average of 3-point increase in NPS among partner organizations and translates to a present value of about 394K in partner-driven profits. Right. And going back to internal benefit, what we heard was a reduced effort around learner onboarding and offboarding administration. So for onboarding, all new hires are automatically enrolled in the correct learning tracks, based on their roles, and this comes without, any manual work. And for offboarding, inactive users are also automatically removed from the system, and this saves, offboarding admin time. So the second point talks about the additional savings from streamlining more complex assessment for specialized hire. And this is especially for industries with intensive onboarding like healthcare. So results are scored instantly, feedback delivered immediately, and all records stored in one system. So this translated to about 199K in present value in productivity uplift. Right. And the last quantified benefit is yet another externally driven one. So it is the additional profit from monetizing online courses to partner and customer learners. So a better learning experience and intuitive navigation led to more course completion for paid courses. And furthermore, we have Adobe has on-demand access and ability to preview courses without registering, and this boosted engagement and flexibility. So all of this, translated into higher revenue from online sales training. So just kind of zooming into the quote on the right, the training director in manufacturing actually shared that the online training revenue nearly doubled. And about 20% of that growth is attributed to Adobe Learning Manager. And improvement in user experience was a key driver in this as well. So apart from quantified benefits, we also explored unquantified benefits. And again, a big theme that kept coming up was improved user experience. A few examples would be workflows, becoming simpler, trainings, being embedded in your brand portals, and learners having, seamless access to learning on any devices. Right. And another big theme was, an increase in employee upskilling. So employees can now spot, their own skill gaps and receive AI-based, course suggestions. And the head of L&D from technology actually told us that the upskilling has gone up and training time were reduced by 25%. So they expect, those gains to translate into long-term revenue growth. So in the third point, we also heard a lot about improved compliance reporting. So the reporting and dashboard tools made it very easy to stay ahead of compliance deadlines, helping, the interviewees to meet regulatory requirements with confidence. And lastly, interviewees also told us that they could expand their training offering by leveraging Adobe Learning Manager's partnership with content providers. And this ties back to the solution's flexibility and long-term value. With Adobe's ecosystem of tools and integrations, it positions itself as a true growth partner, helping organizations expand their offering and drive impact. And on top of that, ALM, really personalizes training through skills mapping. So companies can adapt learning, to new roles, to shifting priorities and changing business needs, which is a very important piece. And with that, I think it's a good time to hear directly about the broader value of Adobe Learning Manager. So let me hand it over to Justin.
All right. Yeah, thanks very much. So thank you for walking us through all of those benefits as well. I think, what's really powerful about those, for me at least, is that they're not abstract. Like they're grounded in everyday use cases and features and experiences that happen inside of the product. This slide kind of brings those benefits into focus by showing you areas where customers consistently see value across the Adobe Learning Manager product. So first, let's talk about learning experience. This is often the deciding factor, for a lot of people when it comes down to it. So I talked about it earlier. The Fluidic player makes any type of content, videos, SCORMs, PDFs, play seamlessly in one interface, which really removes a level of frustration for a lot of folks. Another aspect is the gamification and social learning, which Alan was talking about in the chat, which encourages participation, peer-to-peer sharing, and it keeps people coming back because their peers are in there. They're talking about things. They're sharing insights about courses that they're taking or articles that they've read. It's a huge benefit for the learners. And then finally, with headless delivery, which is another key feature for Adobe Learning Manager, learning can be embedded directly into the flow of work. So a partner or an employee doesn't even realize sometimes that they've entered into a system that includes learning. The learning just kind of shows up on intranets or marketing pages or wherever or even in a mobile app. And with our AI powered search and discovery, learners are able to find the exact training that they need when they need it, just like they'd search for like a video on YouTube. And all of these features really combine to make learning, in my opinion, very intuitive, super engaging. Um, the second phase of this is centralizing routine processes. For administrators, this is where the time savings comes in. So bulk enrollments eliminate the need to assign courses one by one. Learning plans automate the assignment of new learning based on roles or career stages. So when somebody is a new hire or people change jobs and they get moved into a new learner group, you can automatically trigger these learning plans that enroll them in an onboarding plan for that specific role. Super helpful and takes a lot of time off your plate. And in terms of managing users, admins don't have to juggle spreadsheets to keep data in sync. It's all handled in one place, especially the reporting. And one of the examples of this is our new group success dashboard, which was just launched this year. One of our customers, Domino's, actually uses this to train over 200,000 franchise employees. Basically, they need information back from those employees about when they complete certain compliance types of training, and they needed to be able to share dashboards back with regional managers and things like that, and that was a huge unlock for them. And that's one of those things that is kind of an unheralded hero, I think. Blended learning is another aspect where Adobe Learning Manager, unifies the virtual and in-person classroom. You talked about it a little bit, Tamara, when you were talking about all the benefits. And, one example of that would have been me. I was working for a big social media company. You may remember it. It had a big blue bird as the logo. We were doing a lot of certification training, and when 2020 hit and everybody had to go home, we were still doing some things in person because like the world had not completely changed, but we were having to manage like manual checklist, bringing those back to the office, checking them off, entering them into a system. You don't have to do that kind of stuff anymore. Like Adobe Learning Manager can do bulk completions now. Automated attendance tracking takes away all of those manual checklists, ensuring accurate records without you having to do any extra work. And then the platform delivers a unified blended experience. So whether a course is self-paced, live, or it's a mixture of both, it feels very consistent and familiar to the learner. And with those bulk completions, instructors can then certify an entire cohort all at once, which, in compliance-heavy industries like you were talking about, that's a game changer for a lot of folks. So these features all make blended programs easier to manage at scale, at enterprise level scale. And then finally, speaking of enterprise level scale, Adobe Learning Manager is enterprise ready. It's got multi-tenancy. Organizations can serve multiple business units, brands, or even partners from a single platform. I saw there was a question that was sent in the chat. Can it do customers and internal employees from the same platform? Absolutely, it can. The integrations that are built in extend the platform into systems employees already use. Microsoft Teams, Salesforce. Training fits naturally within their workflow. And for external education, integrations with Adobe Commerce and Marketo allow companies to monetize that training or market learning programs just like they do products. So this is how learning evolves from a cost center into a driver of real business growth. And so when you look at the ROI and benefits Forrester shared, they're not theoretical. They're built on features that make life easier for admins, instructors, and learners and create world-class experiences for everybody across the board. So with that in mind, I want to bring everybody that's in the chat back into the conversation. And I want you to tell us, where do you see the biggest opportunity for productivity gains in your learning programs? Is it automating onboarding and role changes, reducing the admin workload, improving your reporting or compliance, or simplifying content management. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. And while we're doing that, also, we're kind of running out of time here. So I want you to make sure if you have any questions, put those in the chat too, as we round the bases for home. And that way, if we have time, we can get to some of those. Oh, everybody, E, all of the above. That's funny. Looks like B and C dominating right now. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on. So let's bring Tamara back in and continue breaking down more of this great information from the study as we round it out.
Yep, thanks, Justin. And what you've shared, really rounds out the benefits. And, with any investment, there are also costs, to consider. And here's how we've modeled them in our study. First of which, there is software licensing costs. So this covers access for, the composite, which once again is the 20,000 internal employees, the 20,000 customer learners, and the 10,000 partner learners. So again, it supports, multiple use cases across your internal training, customer education, and partner enablement. So the second cost segment would be actually the labor cost that's associated with deployment and maintaining of the solution. So deployment really focuses on two things, which is the initial launch activities and the after go live. So initial launch activities are things like your user interface design, internal training, which is essentially, is the preparation to going live. And in the following 6 months after go live, the focus shifts to optimization, which means, completing data migrations and refining your configurations. And when it comes to maintenance, that is post-deployment. So it's ongoing maintenance, and interviewees actually reported, relatively low effort here. So we're talking about mostly, resolving issues and staying updated with new features. Right, and with that, we will wrap up the study, and let's revisit the key results. So from composite, we found a 337% ROI over 3 years, and a present value of 4 million in benefits, and a net present value of 3.1 million. So beyond the numbers, once again, user experience has been a strong theme in our interviews. So the training director in manufacturing really shared that the key benefit was unifying user experience. And this means, bringing everything together in one system and making learning much simpler. So we've covered the numbers and customer perspectives, but ultimately it's about the broader impact of learning. And to close us out, Betsy, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. I know we don't have a lot more. We don't have a lot of time. But what I'll do is just revisit the Kirkpatrick scale again, and for all of you on the call as well, to think about how you are expressing and how you are communicating your value to the team. Notice the difference between something like the learning team delivered 30 programs, driving 95% completion across 15 different skill areas, meaning we're busy. And then actually comparing that against something like employees who completed enterprise learning programs were 3 times more likely to achieve 100% of their goals than their peers who didn't. Basically saying we're effective, right? The learning team achieved its goal of delivering high impact learning at scale while reducing spend by 40%. It's these kinds of differences in how we are communicating our value, and then choosing the technology and the platforms that support us being able to communicate with this kind of business impact that really makes the difference. With 2 minutes to spare, I think it sounds like maybe Gary, I can hand it back over to you, or maybe Justin.
Well, you can hand it back over to me because we're a little bit over, and we need to wrap it up. Unless, Justin, did you have something that you wanted to work in there before we do that?
Not really. Just thank everybody for coming once again. Don't forget about Adobe Learning Summit if you want to join us in Vegas. And if you have any questions, I dropped my LinkedIn in the chat. You can hit me up and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.